Welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here with us today. So, we're going to crack the code on a topic that basically sits right at the intersection of rigid accounting reality and, well, corporate storytelling. We are talking about non-GAAP financial measures. You'll often hear Wall Street call these street earnings. And, if you've ever looked at an earnings report and thought, wait a second, why do the big headline numbers look totally different from the standard accounting rules? You're in the right place. We're going to dive right into this, look past the standard rulebook, and figure out how companies actually measure and present their own performance.
Okay, here's our playbook for today. First, decoding non-GAAP financials. Second, unpacking free cash flow. Third, EBIT and EBITDA explained. Fourth, core earnings and adjustments. Fifth, navigating constant currency. And finally, number 6, common mistakes and a quick recap.
All right, Section 1, Decoding Non-GAAP Financials. Let's set the baseline.
So, to really get why standard accounting sometimes creates a bit of a headache for management, we have to look at the basic definition. A non-GAAP measure is, simply put, a numerical measure of financial performance that intentionally excludes or includes amounts differently than standard GAAP, which stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. Why do they do this? Well, companies often feel like standard GAAP just doesn't tell the whole story. Actually, scratch that, they feel it tells the wrong story sometimes. Let's say a company has a massive one-time restructuring cost. Management might argue that stripping that cost out gives investors a much cleaner look at their normal day-to-day operations. So non-GAAP is basically management's way of presenting a more meaningful picture. But, and this is a big but, because it allows them to manually adjust the numbers, it requires us to scrutinize those numbers incredibly closely.
Now, because companies could, theoretically, use these street earnings to kind of sweep bad news under the rug, the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, steps in as the referee. They do this through something called Regulation G. Basically, if a company wants to use a custom non-GAAP measure, they can't just toss it out there in a vacuum. No way. They absolutely must present the most directly comparable GAAP measure right next to it. On top of that, they have to provide a clear mathematical reconciliation. They have to show you the exact bridge from the official GAAP number to their custom non-GAAP number. And above all else, these measures must be completely free of deception. No untrue statements, and definitely no hiding material facts that would make the whole thing misleading.
Moving on to Section 2, Unpacking Free Cash Flow, the cash metric.
Okay, so the standard formula you're generally going to see is free cash flow equals cash flow from operating activities minus capital expenditures. The idea here is actually super practical. It's meant to show the real, hard cash a company generates from its daily operations minus the cash it literally has to spend just to maintain its current assets. We're talking about things like replacing a broken assembly line machine or upgrading outdated software. It's basically the cash left over after keeping the lights on and the business running.
But here's the critical thing you've got to remember. Free cash flow is kind of the Wild West of finance. Unlike standard GAAP metrics, there is absolutely no universally accepted definition for it. Seriously, none. Because of that, the SEC demands that companies provide a crystal clear description of exactly how they calculated it. Another massive warning here, management should never ever imply that this free cash flow is just pure discretionary cash ready to be spent on whatever they want. There are always other mandatory bills to pay, like debt repayments, that this formula completely ignores. And finally, here's a hard and fast rule. A company must never present free cash flow on a per-share basis, period. Doing that is a giant red flag for regulators.
All right, Section 3, EBIT and EBITDA explained. Let's look at the operating engines.
If you spend literally any time looking at company financials, you are going to see these two acronyms everywhere. EBIT stands for Earnings Before Interest and Taxes. It's used to judge a company's core operations. Think about it. By stripping out interest and taxes, you completely remove the noise of how the company is financed and where it pays taxes. You just get to look at the naked engine of the business and see how well it runs. Then you have EBITDA. That takes it one step further. It stands for Earnings Before Interest, Taxes, Depreciation, and Amortization. By adding back those non-cash expenses like depreciation, EBITDA acts as a really quick, back-of-the-napkin approximation of cash flow. But, just like we saw with free cash flow, there are incredibly strict rules for how these can be shown to the public. When a company reports EBIT or EBITDA, they must reconcile it directly back to net income. Now you might be thinking, wait, aren't these operating metrics? Shouldn't they just reconcile them to operating income? The SEC says absolutely not.
Reconciling to operating income is a huge no-no because EBITDA and EBITDA include adjustments for things that aren't even in operating income in the first place. And just to hammer this point home one more time, neither of these measures can ever be presented on a per-share basis.
Section 4. Core earnings and adjustments. Getting to the true operations.
So, the term core earnings is exactly what it sounds like. It's the profit derived from the absolute main day-to-day activities of a business, intentionally stripping out all the weird, one-off, non-recurring noise. But if a company is going to stand up and present core earnings, they can't just vaguely wave a magic wand to make bad numbers disappear. They're required to clearly, explicitly explain exactly what makes up their core performance. If they decide to exclude, say, legal settlement costs or integration costs from buying another company, they have to publicly disclose exactly why those items aren't considered core and why ignoring them actually helps an investor understand the business better.
When we start talking about adjusted net income, the SEC gets extremely cautious. Honestly, it's super tempting for management to only adjust for the bad stuff, right? Well, the SEC explicitly says you cannot make one-sided adjustments. If you adjust the numbers to remove a weird non-recurring expense, you absolutely must also remove any non-recurring gains from that same period. You can't cherry pick. You also can't be inconsistent. You can't just ignore an expense this year but decide to include it next year unless you clearly spell out that change and explain why you did it. And here is the biggest foul of all. It is wildly inappropriate to exclude normal, recurring cash expenses that are actually needed to run the business. You can't just pretend that everyday bills are sudden one-time anomalies.
Section 5. Navigating constant currency. The global math.
For massive multinational companies, wild swings in foreign exchange rates can make a phenomenal quarter look terrible or a terrible quarter look amazing, entirely based on the strength of the US dollar. It's just noise. To fix this, companies use a non-GAAP measure called a constant currency basis, which basically mathematically eliminates those foreign exchange effects. But transparency is the name of the game here. A company must present the actual historical amounts, the messy, noisy numbers, right alongside the smoothed-out constant currency amounts. Plus, they have to clearly describe the exact math and process they use to calculate that constant currency figure.
All right, Section 6. Common mistakes and a quick recap. The final whistle.
Let's bring this all together. If you are digging into a company's street earnings, these are the ultimate SEC fouls you need to be watching out for. For free cash flow, remember, presenting it on a per-share basis is a massive violation. For EBIT and EBITDA, the classic foul is reconciling it back to operating income. It literally always has to be reconciled to net income. When you're looking at adjusted net income, keep your eyes peeled for management trying to exclude normal, everyday, recurring cash expenses. And finally, if they're bragging about constant currency growth, just make sure they haven't conveniently forgotten to show the actual historical amounts right alongside it.
Which really leaves us with this final, pretty crucial question. Do non-GAAP measures actually reveal a company's true economic engine? Or are they just the polished story that management wants you to see? Well, the reality, as we've explored today, is that it can absolutely be a bit of both. Non-GAAP measures like free cash flow, EBITDA, and core earnings are genuinely incredible tools. They cut right through the rigid accounting noise to show us the operational realities of a business. But without strict adherence to Regulation G and without a highly skeptical, informed eye from you, the viewer, they can easily mask the truth. Next time you open up an earnings release, I really hope you use this explainer as your personal decoder ring. Keep checking those reconciliations, keep asking the hard questions, and never stop learning. Thanks so much for joining me today.